I want to talk to you today about one of the many things that's ruining our planet. It's in almost everything and in everyone. The topic of this video is going to be an environmental one because I think it's important to talk about, or at least just to acknowledge. Even though I care a lot about environmental topics, I don't usually talk about them with anyone, mainly because I don't know a lot of other people who are interested in these topics as much as I am. But since this channel is my place to talk about anything I want with you, the viewer, let's get it started. I think that most people, perhaps you included, would agree that being environmentally friendly, eco-conscious, sustainable, or whatever term you want to use is a good thing. But in my experience, not a lot of people take it seriously. At least, not seriously enough to make any effective change in their own lives. I don't know about you, but I think that the concern for the environment for a lot of people and companies today is mostly or entirely performative, or in words only. Like saying, yeah, I think it's important to take care of the planet, but if your actions don't reflect that belief, then no, you don't care about the planet. You are lying. Actions are what define us, not just our words. However, I think in recent years, more people are becoming genuine in taking action to be better for the environment. At least, I hope so. Since about the 1960s, it seems that environmentalism has become a trend that experiences ebbs and flows in its widespread popularity. In 2006, the documentary An Inconvenient Truth was released, which marked a massive societal awareness of how our actions affect climate change and future living conditions on planet Earth. And in 2025, nearly 20 years after learning or being reminded of that sobering information, things don't seem to be much better. In some ways, it's gotten worse. As I'm writing this, Los Angeles is on fire. The wildfires were a result of drought conditions combined with 80 to 100 mile per hour Santa Ana winds. The foretold effects of climate change, like devastating hurricanes and wildfires that we've all heard about for the past 50 years or so, are finally being reaped upon us. Al Gore knew about climate change since the 80s, and he stated multiple times that he's had a hard time getting people to care about it. South Park has poked fun at this several times, how no one takes Al Gore seriously.
I tried to warn you all, but no one took me serial. You all just made fun of me, didn't you?
But, as we've seen in recent years, he was right. Man, Bear, Pig is real. The show The Curse, which I highly recommend by the way, also satirizes society's general lack of care for the environment by way of sustainable living. The show features passive homes, which on their own can use energy efficiently and reduce its carbon footprint.
You don't need cooling systems, heating systems. It literally just keeps the temperature just at the right temperature, if you want to say that.
But as soon as the people living in the homes realize they have to sacrifice some of their own comfort or convenience for the sake of saving energy, they make modifications to the house to appease their own comfort, thus rendering the house non-passive. To me, this just highlights that making the commitment to sustainable living is not very easy or desirable for a lot of people, and that generally people will modify their surroundings in service of their own comfort, even if it is damaging to the environment. It's obvious that humans have pretty much always had a negative impact on the environment. I mean, history shows us that mankind's ultimate goal has been to dominate and tame every species of plant and animal there is, including other humans, for their own benefit. Yet more and more people today, I think, are finally realizing that their continued destruction on the planet isn't sustainable, and that one day, it's going to kill us all. In 2015, Conservation International released a series of short films with the message, "Nature doesn't need people, people need nature." Each video is narrated by a different celebrity, like Jason Momoa is the wave.
I am the wave.
And is essentially the environment telling us humans that nature can sustain itself without people, but that people cannot even survive without nature. And all the many ecosystems that we rely on for our food, our oxygen, and our water, plus much more. And that if humans end up destroying the living conditions on Earth, nature will restore itself even without us. People can easily be wiped out by fires, floods, and erosion, and it doesn't matter to the planet whether or not we live through all these natural phenomena. I think it's interesting that even though we've known about the devastating effects of climate change for decades, it still feels like a taboo subject to bring up to people. To be honest, sometimes I feel like the asshole for wanting to recycle or save water. Why is that? I mean, ever since I can remember, environmentalists have always been portrayed as whack jobs or outsiders in mainstream media. They're either crazy, angry, arrogant, or all of the above. A notable example is Jim Carrey's environment guy from the show Living in Color.
I'm trying to teach these people how to embrace the planet, and they're not listening. It's insanity. I swear, it just makes me crazy. I wish somebody would just reach out and do something. I'm running out of breath.
Or Poison Ivy, a Batman villain, which is the craziest kind of batshit there is.
And the time has come for plants to take back the world so rightfully ours.
Or any vegan. I always wondered why it wasn't considered more of the norm just to want to live better for the planet. Apparently there's a psychological reason why environmentalists have been portrayed in such a poor light in the past, but that seems to be changing in recent years. It's because being conscious about what we consume and how much we waste directly goes against traditional Western society's preferred idea of a comfortable, carefree lifestyle. Most people don't want to be bothered with the reality of rapid climate change and diminishing biodiversity around the world. At least in the US, we've shaped a society where most people don't have to think about where their food comes from or where their trash goes after they throw it away. They don't want to think about the harmful consequences of their continued consumption and waste. They hope that once they throw something in the trash, it goes away and it becomes someone else's problem. I think because of documentaries and social media today, more people have been faced with the reality of climate change and how rapidly the world is changing for the worse. In December 2024, Netflix released 2 documentaries that focus on how human activity has harmed the planet. And before that, Max released a documentary about the social and environmental devastation caused by fast fashion. These documentaries show you what happens in the world when you throw stuff away and make you feel like shit for being a wasteful human. I think that's a good thing. More people need to be faced with the truth. Too many of us are just blindly consuming and creating unnecessary waste. Plus, I like documentaries that unveil the atrocities in the world, even if they are depressing. You can't be happy all the time. It's okay to be depressed, sometimes. Documentaries like Earthlings, An Apology to Elephants, By Now, A Life on Our Planet, Seaspiracy, and Oceans make me feel ashamed for how we, as a collective species, have ruined our one and only home planet. Good. There's not enough shame in this world anymore. I don't know when it started, but it seems like everyone is too afraid to shame each other nowadays. But if we want to save this world for ourselves and for our children and for our children's children, we need to bring back shame. Damn it. So that's what I'm here to do with this video. Shame on you. Shame. A big contributor to climate change is mass production of fossil fuel derived products, including plastic. There, I finally circled back to the main topic of this video. Sorry for the long intro, but I have a lot to say. At every stage of plastic production, consumption, and disposal, havoc is wreaked on our planet. But where did it all start? To understand what plastic is, first we're going to dive into the history and science of this wicked material. The term plastic describes any material that can be formed and molded under heat and pressure. The modern plastics that we all know and use today are polymers, and the process that creates plastic materials is called polymerization. Natural plastics include plant and animal-derived materials like animal horns and tusks, tortoiseshell, amber, or rubber. Before modern industrialization, these were the plastics that were popularly used to make various products that people kept and valued for their utility and beauty. But by the middle of the 19th century, increasing demand for plastic goods caused animal-derived materials to become scarce. Elephants were facing extinction for demand of their ivory, which was used to make things like piano keys and billiard balls. Also, some species of turtle were becoming endangered because people used their shells to make combs and other goods, like tortoiseshell glasses. In an effort to save the animals and to save on increasing costs for materials, inventors experimented with creating semi-synthetic materials based on natural substances such as cork, blood, and milk. Well, now there's plastic in our blood and in our milk. One invention that came from this plastic revolution was cellulose nitrate, which is made from cotton fibers dissolved in nitric and sulfuric acids, then mixed with vegetable oil. It was invented by Birmingham-born artisan cum chemist Alexander Parkes, who patented the new material in 1862. It was known as Parkezine, now considered the world's first manufactured plastic. Parkezine was a cheap and colorful substitute for ivory or tortoiseshell. Seems ironic that synthetic plastics were invented to solve an ecological problem, to save animals. But gee, look where we are now. Shortly after the invention of cellulose nitrate came celluloid, created by John Wesley Hyatt. Celluloid was used to create various products, most notably celluloid film, which was extremely flammable.
Because nitrate film burns 3 times faster than paper.
It wasn't until the 20th century that we saw the invention of fully synthetic plastics, beginning with Bakelite, invented by Belgian chemist Leo Baekeland in 1907. Bakelite combines two chemicals, formaldehyde and phenol, under heat and pressure. It was an affordable material and could be made into many objects, including telephones, radios, and cameras. Also in the early 20th century, petroleum and chemical industries began forming alliances, and companies like Dow Chemicals, ExxonMobil, DuPont, and BASF, or BASF, I think. These companies are still the major producers of raw material resins for the plastics industry today, and they are making insane bank while polluting everything on Earth. These alliances were driven by the desire to make use of waste materials from processing crude, oil, and natural gas. One of the most abundant, or bountiful, meaning a lot of these materials was ethylene gas, a byproduct that the British company Imperial Chemical Industries, or ICI, succeeded to make a plastic from. In 1933, ICI was attempting to combine ethylene and benzaldehyde under great pressure and heat. The experiment failed, but due to a leak of oxygen into the vessel that they used for the experiment, they discovered they had created a white, waxy substance, a polymer of ethylene. This came to be known as polyethylene, which is now the world's most abundant plastic. Polyethylene exploded in popularity as it was strong, flexible, and heat-resistant. Because of its desirable properties, it quickly became known as a wonder material. Many consumer products were then created with polyethylene, from plastic shopping bags and Tupperware to artificial knee and hip joints. Also in the 1930s, US-based company DuPont saw success from its creation of materials like nylon and Teflon. Fast forward to today, and plastics can be made into almost any consumer good imaginable. Like I said at the beginning of this video, plastic is in almost everything and everyone. Sometimes people put plastics into their body on purpose, like for medical procedures, but plastic can also involuntarily make its way into human bodies in the form of plastic particles, or microplastics, which are absorbed or ingested through food, the air, or the water. Today, it's impossible not to come into some form of plastic at least once in your everyday life. Even most clothing now is made from some type of petroleum-based textile like polyester, acrylic, or nylon. The sweater that I'm wearing is, 36% acrylic, 32% alpaca, 17% nylon, 12% wool, and 3% cotton. So it is mostly plastic. The wide use of plastic began in the post-World War II period, when plastic began to replace more expensive paper, glass, and metal materials that were often used in throwaway or single-use items like consumer packaging. Globally, about 40% of plastics are used as packaging, including the plastic water bottle, one of the absolute worst inventions of our time. It even introduces plastic bottles with among the worst offenders in the plastic problem. The PET, or polyethylene terephthalate, bottle was first patented in 1973 by American entrepreneur Nathaniel Wyeth. The PET polymer was developed specifically to contain pressurized carbonated liquids like sodas or fizzy drinks. Coca-Cola and Pepsi began using plastic bottles to package their beverages in 1978. Since then, the popularity of plastic bottles as containers for beverages, including still water, has since exploded in the 21st century as they are lightweight, resealable, recyclable, and unbreakable when dropped. The economics of mass-produced, cheap plastic products have also led to a single-use culture. Today, around 500 billion PET bottles are sold every year. This figure is increasing, with the majority of plastic bottles ending up in our oceans, degrading into microplastics. Well, isn't that great? Now that we understand how plastics are made and why they're so popular, now we'll take a look at what happens to plastic after its disposal. When someone buys a plastic product, they may use it for just a short while, often only for a few minutes, and then they throw it away. But where is away? Science tells us that matter can neither be created nor destroyed. Things can't just disappear.
Can they? Disappear?
No, of course not. What the fuck are you talking about?
It has to go somewhere, and because plastic is a natural material that was created to be incredibly durable, it takes a very long time to decompose in nature. While this is good for when we want to use the plastic product, it makes disposing of plastic incredibly difficult when we're no longer using it. Because of its chemical composition, plastic degrades incredibly slowly, sometimes taking decades or even thousands of years to fully break down, depending on the type of plastic polymer. And because plastic doesn't exist in nature, there are no organisms that exist to effectively break it down. There is a type of bacteria called Ideonella zachaiensis. I don't know. There's a type of bacteria that can eat plastic. However, it's very slow and there isn't enough of this bacteria in the wild to make an effective impact on plastic decomposition. After plastics have been used, many people may dump them into the environment, either on purpose, littering, or other times accidentally. Even if plastics are properly placed in a trash receptacle and picked up by a waste collector, some plastics are lightweight enough to blow away in the wind and enter waterways and eventually get into our oceans. I think a big reason why plastic ends up polluting our oceans is because we're all just really bad at getting rid of our waste, and we have far too much waste. The only way plastic can properly be disposed of is either by landfill, incineration, or recycling. Out of these three options, incineration or burning has the worst climate impact. When you burn plastics, copious amounts of greenhouse gases and pollutants are released into the environment, and it is toxic as shit. Option 2 is landfilling, or burying plastic in the earth. It's almost the equivalent of sweeping dust under a rug when you're trying to clean up. We'll worry about that later. Hopefully it'll decompose safely. Luckily, most landfills are engineered to safely contain and process waste. However, they come at the expense of taking up a significant amount of land, smelling terrible, and attracting a lot of birds. There's also a possibility that liquids generated from that decomposing waste in the landfill, called leachate, can leak into the soil and the groundwater underneath the landfills, and pollute the surrounding communities. Now you might think that option 3, recycling, is the saving grace to getting rid of the plastic problem. While recycling is the best option for disposal over burying or burning plastic, unfortunately, recycling isn't very easy or cost-effective most of the time. Compared to the low costs of virgin materials or newly refined plastic, recycled plastics are considered high cost with low commercial value. So this makes recycling profitable only rarely, and it requires a considerable amount of government subsidies for funding. One of the biggest barriers to recycling plastics is separation of materials. When different polymers are mixed, the new material usually isn't very useful for creating new products. Even two items that are both made of PET, which is what plastic water bottles are made of, these polymers may have different melting temperatures that produce, quote, an unusable sludge when combined. In addition, the current most economical way of sorting plastics for recycling is with human labor. People sort recycled materials in waste facilities, and the recycling industry has its own set of health and safety hazards for its workers, because workers are exposed to hazardous materials and dangerous machinery. After plastics are successfully sorted for recycling, only 2% of plastics are recycled into products with the same function, or sometimes they're repurposed for something of arguably better quality. The PET bottle, one of the most annoying things on this planet, is one of the most recycled items in the world. Clothing is just one use for recycled PET polyester, initially made popular by Patagonia fleeces, which are made from post-consumer plastics. And another 8% of plastics are downcycled into something of lower quality. The rest of the plastics are either landfilled, incinerated, or leaked into the environment.
That is bleak. So,
what happens when plastic is leaked into the environment? Like the oceans, where the majority of plastics end up. Plastics can break down into smaller pieces through biodegradation, or exposure to the sun, the heat, or water. As plastics degrade, they break down into microplastics, which pollute the oceans, the air, and various ecosystems around the world. Ecosystems which we humans and all other living creatures on Earth need to live. Low-density polyethylene, one of the most common types of plastics found in the ocean, releases greenhouse gases as it breaks down in the environment. Plastics of any size, from consumer plastics to commercial fishing materials, also harm animals through entanglement and ingestion at all levels of the food chain. From tiny plankton to huge whales, no animal is safe from plastic pollution. And evidence suggests that plankton are ingesting ever greater quantities of microplastics. And these microplastics move up the food chain as plankton are typically eaten by fish, crustaceans, and squid. And those animals get eaten by larger animals, including humans. The health implications of microplastic deposits in our bodies are not yet fully known. I'm morbidly curious about how plastic will affect human health and evolution within the next century. I mean, it's already happening, so I guess we'll find out. Even people who aren't born yet have plastic in them. There's also so much contaminated waste produced every day that the United States and other Western countries have sent their garbage to China for processing. But in 2018, China has decided to close its doors to the West's contaminated recycling. Instead of increasing domestic recycling capacity, the US now sends its waste to other Asian countries like Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam. However, some of these countries are now deciding to turn down Western recycling. Good for them. We as Americans need to be held accountable for our own waste. It's not fair that a poorer country should have to suffer for our endless garbage. The social and economic effects of climate change are a whole other topic that maybe someday I'll also make a video about. We throw away an assortment of trash every day. Most often it comes in the form of food packaging like wrappers, bottles, bags, boxes, and more. I recycle by putting all paper, metal, glass, and clean plastics into the recycling bin. I think I'm being responsible by sorting my trash into landfill, recycling, and most recently I've added compost for organic waste. But if at least 90% of what I'm recycling isn't actually being recycled for a better purpose, then what am I doing wrong? Am I wasting my time sorting my trash? I think a big reason why recycling is so inefficient right now is that most people, me included, just are not entirely sure which materials will actually be accepted and used for recycling. I believe there's a lot of misinformation or just missing information altogether on what can actually be recycled. There are 7 different categories of plastic alone, and not all of them can be processed for recycling. Also, many plastic products combine recyclable materials with non-recyclable materials, and they're usually very difficult, if not impossible, to separate for recycling. So ask consumers what should go into recycling and what should go into landfill. What's really the best way to sort it all for the greater good? Well, luckily, we have the technology. The internet. There are many online resources available that tell you how to sort your trash, and it differs from county to county. So I live in Los Angeles, and according to LA Sanitation, all of these materials can be recycled, including number 1 and 5 plastics, while these materials can't. This information is also posted on most public garbage and recycling bins. So wherever you live, just take a few minutes to look up your local waste management and sanitation guidelines. Most of the time, you can find a handy-dandy, easy-peasy reference sheet like this one. Print it out or write it down and post it by your garbage bins so you never forget what goes where. Easy. Okay, so even if we know how to properly sort our trash for reducing landfill and incineration and maximizing recycling, is that really the best solution we have to the plastic problem? Well, if you're an average dumbass like myself and you have no choice but to have some plastic products in your home, then recycling is probably the best we can do with our plastic waste at this point in time. There is an even better solution, but I'll get into that later. First, what are the specialists and the innovators doing to solve the plastic problem? The smart people are the ones who introduced synthetic plastic into this world, so it only seems fit that they should also have a solution for how to safely dispose of it all. Some people advocate for using only zero carbon energy sources like wind and solar for the refining or creation stage of plastic, which is incredibly greenhouse gas intensive. And manufacturing ethylene, which is in all polyethylene products, which is the most common type of plastic we have right now, is only expected to increase. Most commercial industries don't want to stop plastic production. They just want the process of making the plastic to be perceived as less harmful for the environment. Okay? But even if using only wind and solar power to create plastics does decrease overall carbon dioxide emissions by 50%, it's still not going to offset the long-term damage caused by plastic after it's disposed of. Like, oh, good job not releasing carbon dioxide into the air when you made the plastic, but that plastic is going to release carbon dioxide and other pollutants into the air anyway, either when it ends up degrading in the environment or burning in an incineration facility at the end of its useful life. That piece of plastic might also suffocate a sea creature or get eaten by a fish and then get eaten by a human. So no matter how sustainably you make the plastic, it's always going to come back to bite us in the ass. As we discovered earlier, plastic is incredibly hard to get rid of and it stays on this planet for a very long time. Another solution is to develop and use materials that aren't synthetic plastic. Instead of going back to the old days when we were killing elephants and turtles to make billiard balls and combs, green plastics are derived from natural biological materials such as cornstarch and plants. ICI, the British company that first created polyethylene, also developed the first practical biodegradable plastic in 1990, Biopol. Unfortunately, hardly anyone uses bioplastics because they're more expensive to produce compared to cheap petroleum-based plastics. So if any kind of plastic, be it synthetic or natural, is either harmful for the environment or impractical and too expensive to make, then the single best solution we have to the plastic problem right now is just to stop using plastic altogether. It's obvious. Stop making it, stop buying it, and stop throwing it away. Choosing plastic-free materials like paper, glass, and cotton, and reusing everything as much as possible really is the best solution we have right now. Reusing our plastics is a lot better than recycling, which we discovered is terribly inefficient and does very little to actually help the environment. However, I'm not saying that you shouldn't recycle. If you have recyclable trash in your home, it's better to dispose of it where it has the potential to be turned into another useful material rather than burying or burning the plastic. One of the articles I read states that the solution to the plastic problem will be a social and political one, meaning that we have to decide to make the change and we have to put pressure on our governments to enforce that change. The key will be moving away from single-use plastics altogether. I know this may sound impossible since most consumer goods now are either made of plastic, packaged in plastic, or both. However, even though it's the product suppliers that are generating all of this plastic material, I think a lot of the responsibility also comes down to the consumer. Me and you, baby. We're in this plastic mess together specifically because of heightened consumer demand for more plastic products. And to keep up with that demand, companies created materials that were cheap and convenient to produce. And because animals were going extinct because we were killing them for their natural plastics, we decided to create our own plastics, synthetic ones. But if consumer demand shifts to more eco-friendly and plastic-free materials, then that's what companies will focus on producing. We've already seen that recycled plastic items like those Patagonia fleeces mentioned earlier have become marketable and fashionable due to increasing environmental consciousness. Even if it's only performative, companies and corporations will always aim to satisfy the popular demands of the consumer. That's just like basic economics.
Supply and demand, my friend.
We demand it, they supply it. In recent years, I've heard more and more people talk about their concerns for the environment and wanting to enact change to make the world better, which is good. But the cynical part of me thinks that no matter how many environmentalism trends we go through, I think the majority of people are still going to be ignorant or apathetic about their negative impact in the world, or they're just not going to take it seriously enough to change their own lifestyles, which is what we need to do. And large corporations are always going to prioritize maximizing their own profits at the expense of the environment. We've already seen that the corporate method of caring for the environment is greenwashing its consumers. Greenwashing is when a company deceives consumers into believing that their products are environmentally friendly, but really, they're not. In reality, most companies just don't care about sustaining the environment. They just care about getting as much money from you as possible. The only form of sustainability that they truly care about is keeping you hooked on their products so that you keep coming back and buying more. And they're really good at keeping you hooked through their marketing. Single-use plastics, for example, have become normalized in our society. Just think about how many people on a daily basis use and throw away plastic water bottles, plastic utensils, plastic bags, disposable coffee cups, disposable toothbrushes, disposable razors, disposable vapes. You get it. It's very strange to me. It's wasteful not only for the environment, but for your personal finances. When you purchase anything disposable, unless you plan to reuse that item multiple times, you're literally paying for garbage. We've all gotten way too comfortable with our high levels of consumption of single-use items. We seem to be throwing away more of what we purchase than what we actually end up keeping. A lot of people are so accustomed to this lifestyle and having these single-use plastics that they're just not going to give them up very easily. And I get it. It's much easier to purchase and throw away a single-use item than it is to wash and reuse the item, or even just to give a little bit of thought in how to properly dispose of that item. And we've all been conditioned by the oil and chemical companies who created this shit to think that this way of life is normal and sustainable, but it's not. This is not what sustainability looks like. And the problem is only going to get worse unless we stop now. I mean, we should have stopped like 50 years ago, but It's no time like the present, right? According to Claire Arkin, communications coordinator for the Global Alliance for Incinerator Alternatives, we can't recycle our way out of the plastic pollution crisis. There's simply too much plastic, single-use plastic, being produced and consumed. So we have to figure out a better way of getting rid of our waste. Or better yet, we need to stop producing so much waste. And everybody can do just a little bit of effort to help. If anything, just don't buy as much plastic or as much stuff in general. I mean, how much more stuff do you actually need? What you might forget is that plastic was created to be very durable and reusable, meaning you can use the same piece of plastic again and again, over and over, forever and ever. Most plastics have a life expectancy of tens, hundreds, or even thousands of years. A single piece of plastic is going to outlive you, so you might as well get as much use out of it as you can without generating more waste. To get more life out of a single-use item, like a beverage container for example, all you have to do is wash it like you would a normal dish. It might take a little time, like 30 seconds to a minute, but I think that little amount of time is worth it if it means keeping that piece of plastic out of the ocean. And then you can turn that single-use item into an infinite-use item. Here's a list I compiled of some plastic items that you need to buy only once and can reuse indefinitely, or you can replace them entirely with longer-lasting plastic-free items. Starting with water bottles. You can replace those ugly plastic water bottles with a home water filter, or just drink from the tap for free. You would save so much money, save yourself the hassle of having to haul heavy packs of water from the store to your home, and you would reduce so much plastic waste. And dare I say it, home filtered water tastes a lot better than plastic water, especially if you use charcoal. Also, you just shouldn't have to pay for water in general. It should be a free public good enjoyed by everybody because it is just a natural human right. We need water to survive, so why should we have to pay for it? You wouldn't pay for jars of air, would you? No. Grocery bags. Instead of paying more money at the grocery store for those plastic bags, you can reuse them or replace them with cotton or polyester bags. Plastic sandwich bags like Ziploc bags. You can reuse them over and over by washing them out or replace them with some silicone pouches. Shrink wrap. You can reuse pieces of shrink wrap by washing it or replacing it with silicone sheets or caps. For food storage, you can reuse any takeout containers you get from restaurants or just get yourself a nice set of Tupperware or Pyrex containers because that shit lasts forever. When it comes to disposable pens, you can use a refillable fountain pen and just purchase the cartridges, which use less plastic than the full-size disposable pens. Toothpaste, floss, and deodorant. You can replace all of these items with plastic-free alternatives. Laundry detergent. You can also replace these with plastic-free alternatives. I understand that some plastic-free products can have a more expensive upfront cost compared to cheaper plastic products, but in the long run, you actually save money because you don't have to continuously buy more products. And even if you don't care about saving the environment, maybe you care about saving money. If you don't want to buy anything new, then just reuse some of the plastic products that you already own and don't buy any more. By reusing plastic sandwich bags, for example, it could be years until you actually have to buy more. And then you could put that money that you save towards something else. I mean, for example, this plastic bag has been washed and reused countless times, and look how durable it still is. No holes. I don't throw them away until they break. I haven't had to buy new plastic bags in years. I just keep and reuse the ones that I already paid for. Or I use these silicone pouches instead. You can also support businesses that produce plastic-free products and use plastic-free packaging, which I feel like more and more businesses are starting to do. The Grove Collective, Bite, Huppy, and Drops are just a few of the companies that I like to support because of their commitment to eliminating plastic waste. You can also keep refillable containers and purchase items in bulk. A lot of grocery stores will allow you to bring in your own containers and fill up on bulk food items like dry goods and produce. Just be sure to weigh the empty container first so you can subtract the tear from the total price. And before the next time you buy a product, just think about what you're actually paying for, because your dollars are like votes. Whenever you buy something, it's like you're voting for that company that produces that product. Everything you consume has an effect on someone else's life, either locally or globally, in the present or in the future. So ask yourself, is this product something that I will value and keep for a long time? Do I really need more? Do I have enough already? Does the production or disposal of this item harm other life on the planet? So yeah, I care about the environment. I'm that guy. And sadly, most of the time, I feel like I'm the only one around me who cares. Just by looking outside, it seems like most people would rather treat the earth like a giant garbage can or a toilet. And as a result, I feel like I have to do more to help the environment just to make up for everyone else's lack of caring or ignorance. And I feel like I don't even do enough for the environment. I don't understand why someone wouldn't care about the environment if only to be selfish or dumb, because we all live here, and people are going to keep living here, hopefully for many more generations to come, until we eventually go extinct. So why would you choose to make the one and only livable planet that we know of in the entire universe worse for every other living creature and leave future generations with a dying world? I mean, at this point in time, it seems like everyone's going to be wiped out with fires or floods. It's already happening. As much as I hate to admit it, synthetic plastics are here to stay, and their production is only going to increase. Sadly, the world is run by corporate greed and bribed politicians, and perhaps it's truly beyond saving at this point. As soon as the Earth becomes unlivable for humans, all the billionaires and titans of industry who created all these problems will probably board onto luxury spaceships and abandon the rest of humanity on a dying Earth. In the documentary A Life on Our Planet, David Attenborough has said that we've not only ruined the wild world, but that we've destroyed it. He's not wrong. However, we can never truly destroy the world. According to Robert S. Devine, in his book, The Sustainable Economy, he states, "Even if we humans continue to abuse the environment, we will not destroy the planet. We may debase the Earth to the point that it is best suited for cockroaches, but the third rock from the sun will muddle through." Sustainability is about quality of life for people, about maintaining the environment in which we evolved, and that allows us to thrive. To delay our extinction, I strongly believe that humans should act as shepherds or stewards to the Earth, respecting nature and taking from it no more than what we need. We should use our intelligence not to tame the wild, but to live in harmony with it. Because those ecosystems in the wild are what's keeping us alive. It's what's giving us fresh oxygen and clean water, and by destroying it, we're only destroying ourselves. If we continue to destroy the world for selfish reasons, the world will just destroy us. The world doesn't need people. In fact, it would probably do much better without us at this point. I mean, what do people really contribute to the environment that's good? We've introduced plastic into the environment, which is not natural or healthy for any living creature, including us. Well, actually, we don't know yet what plastic's going to do to us, so I guess we'll find out. The world will never be the same because of plastic, and it's scary to think about what's going to happen to everything because of it. And it's not just plastic. It's almost everything man-made. I only focused on plastic for this video because it's a very common material, and I'm confident that every person on this earth has come into some form of plastic at least once in their life. Clothing, which also contains some plastic, is another big problem. Like, what the fuck is this? If Santa Monica Beach had clothes washing up on shore, more people would take these issues seriously. But because the United States prefers to hide its problems and ship its unwanted garbage away for poorer countries to deal with, most citizens here are completely oblivious to their waste and consumption problem. Anyway, I hope it made you feel like shit. To end this video, here's a quote from Al Gore. "Each one of us is a cause of global warming, but each one of us can make choices to change that with the things we buy, the electricity we use, the cars we drive. We can make choices to bring our individual carbon emissions to zero. The solutions are in our hands. We just have to have the determination to make it happen. We have everything we need to reduce carbon emissions, everything but political will. But in America, the will to act is a renewable resource." All right, that's all for now. Happy New Year.